All right. Well, Miss Susan, thanks for taking time to talk with us a little bit about this transition that we see our families go through from being on antepartum to then going to postpartum or mom baby, and then they've got a baby up in the NICU and they're having to adjust to that environment too. Mm-hmm. So tell us what unit is that you work on and what your role is.
Okay, so I am a full-time nurse on the postpartum unit. I've been on this unit since 2012. I've taken care of many patients and families that have had babies in the NICU, and maybe they knew their baby was going to the NICU before they delivered, and maybe this was an unexpected occurrence that they weren't planning for. So we've taken care of lots of different families.
So you've had both the anticipated I'm going to be there and then the surprise.
Yes.
Okay. And you shared about how long you've been in your role. If you were to think about families that are coming over from antepartum to NICU, but via mother baby, what do you think sort of stands out for you in terms of how they're feeling making that transition? What have you kind of observed?
Going from antepartum to postpartum, I think they're a little bit nervous. They're leaving an environment that they're comfortable with, nurses that they're comfortable with, and then they're going over to a whole brand new room, new environment, new rules. We have different visitor rules sometimes, depending on COVID. So all of that is can be anxiety building for them.
And then these are moms and dads in many cases, maybe not, maybe they're single parents, partnered parents that also have this baby that's in a neonatal intensive care unit. And what would you say are some of the things you've observed about how they're feeling about now my baby's here and my baby isn't in my room?
Right.
Anything that kind of stands out for you in terms of what you've seen, the host of feelings that parents might exhibit?
Most of them are very anxious to get up to the NICU. And a lot of times when they come over, maybe from the delivery room or the operating room, they come over to us, they want to get right up there. And sometimes they're not able to because the baby's, being taken care of, and parents, shouldn't be at the bedside at that moment. But they do get anxious to get up there. So they get anxious about pumping because they feel like it's something that they can do to to help the baby in the meantime while they can't be with them. So there's just a lot of triggers that can provoke anxiety for them and uncertainty.
Absolutely. So much of the unknown, especially if you've never had a baby in the NICU or you've never most of them get a tour, so they know a tiny bit about the lay of the land, but then it's like, well, now I'm really living this. So what would you say are your top concerns as a staff person during that transition of knowing that you're receiving this antepartum mom who maybe had weeks, maybe months on that unit, and now you're helping them to adjust to their own physical care, but then this baby that's upstairs?
Probably one of the top priorities is just making them feel comfortable and supported, making it feel like that they're just going from one part of the house to the next, and not feeling like they have to start all over again. But it would, sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. But if the lines of communication were open, and that for the antepartum, the delivery nurse, the postpartum nurse, and the NICU nurse to all be on the same page, or at least in the same chapter, to help these parents of what they know, what they should know, who should be telling them what they need to know. I think sometimes too much information is overwhelming. So for them to receive all the information about NICU at one time can be too much. And honestly, they have a lot going on, and and sometimes they don't grasp a lot of the information, and it has to be repeated. Honestly, probably postpartum nurses don't know everything that goes on up at the NICU. So maybe the postpartum nurse and even the antepartum nurse should know what's happening up at the NICU. Or what, as little as, what are the visiting hours? What are the policies now with that? Because that's one of the first questions that patients ask. Can the grandmother go up and see them? Can my 5-year-old go up and see them? So knowing even those little things. One of the big things that we are not educated on, but the NICU parents always ask us is, how do I set up my NIC view? And I've never set it up. I don't know how, and I hate telling patients I don't know how to do that, but we can look through the paperwork together and I can try to see if I can help you. I should just be able to say, oh, here, let me help you download that on your app, and here's how you troubleshoot, and kind of the little rules to that. They always turn off the cameras during these times, and it's not so you can't see, it's just because it's because of this reason or that reason. And I'm sure there's probably many more things that we don't know about, but those are just some examples.
That's really excellent. Shifting gears a little bit is, how do you care for both the patient and then their partner or their support person when you're trying to balance, like, really this is your patient that you're responsible for, but you've got this other person, and you know that in both of their minds there's this little baby upstairs. How do you balance all that, would you say? And do you find that difficult?
I personally don't find it difficult, but I try my best to, when I know I go into their room, to know it may not be just a quick in and out. So when I go in there, I try to have 15-20 minutes allotted to be in there. I always try to know their first names. Not every nurse does, but so I can say, Michael, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Michael, how can I support you during this? Along with your wife, Jennifer. I just,
right.
And then open lines of communication as far as with the patient. I always try to ask them open-ended questions, not yes and no questions. I try to listen to what they say and I try not to interrupt them when they're talking. Just kind of let it out. And a lot of times what they tell me too, and then I'll go back and talk to the NICU nurse, and what they have interpreted and come back with information is different than what's really happening up there too. And that's a good thing for me to know, because then I can talk to the NICU nurse and say, I don't think they're really grasping what's happening with their baby. Maybe they need some re-education or other things I try to do, like I said, I ask them open-ended questions. I try to listen without interruptions. And then I always ask them, how can I support you? How can I help you during this time? So is there anything I can do for you? And I definitely don't tell them everything's going to be okay, because I don't know that. And I think especially with our newer nurses, it'd be nice to have education on how to be verbal with our patients when they're in vulnerable situations like this. So
excellent. So it sounds like, feeling like the important information gets passed along to you, and then obviously to the NICU, and then even doing some of that reinterpretation, obviously, for the patient, so that what they heard is actually what was said.
Right.
And you said it very clearly in the beginning about just how overwhelming the transition is, and so having to repeat ourselves is not a sign of a patient's not paying attention. It's like they're on overload.
Right.
And even for, like you said, newer nurses to be aware of that. So probably some education in that regard. Anything that you feel like we're doing really well in terms of transition? Things that we're, I think we got this down, but not that we can't tweak things.
Yeah, well, I think one thing that we do well is between the 3 units. I feel like we support each other when they say, oh my gosh, when the parents say, I can't believe my baby's in the NICU, and I say, I'm so sorry, but this NICU is the best. I never say, oh, good luck. I never want to say that. Yeah. I always try to tell them that they are in the best hospital, the best place to be. I reassure them that the care that they're giving is top notch. So I think we do really well in supporting each other that way. So
wonderful. Anything else, if you could add other things that you would like to see? You talked about the nursing education, especially around communication and kind of, how to talk about sensitive and vulnerabilities.
One other thing is, and I'm not sure how we would do this, but updates on the baby between the NICU nurse and the postpartum nurse, because sometimes when things are happening up in the NICU and the parents come down from the NICU and they're emotional, they're vulnerable, they're teary, and then the postpartum nurse comes in so cheerful and, hi, how are you guys? And they're in their room just, it's the last thing they want.
Yeah, right.
So kind of a heads up to say, hey, this is going on with this baby, so we tweak our care to their needs. And then it's nice for, the day shift nurse to be able to pass that on to the night shift nurse and vice versa. So just updates on how the baby is doing, because that tells us a lot on how the parents are doing and what kind of needs we can provide for them emotionally, physically. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the work that you do.
You're very welcome.
And we'll go from there.
Okay.
Thank you so much.